This is the final product of the procedural material that we're going to be making today. It is a ceramic tile, and this is what it looks like in the viewport in Eevee. It also works in cycles if you want it to. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So to set up our scene in this one, we're going to be hitting Shift A. We're going to add mesh and we'll add a plane. Size of this plane, I'll just make it about the size of a normal floor. So let's say the room is like, I don't know, 5 meters by like 5 meters. Let's say we got a square room going on here, something like so. Then we go to camera view. I just have the camera aiming at the 3D cursor. Camera, the focal length I've set to a 70. And this light up here, I've the there's a location up here if you want to copy the exact spot. And I have the wattage set to 1000. So if we go to our rendered view in Eevee, it looks something like this. Eevee settings, I have ambient occlusion, bloom, screen space reflections checked, and then medium high contrast on color management. But this is all just scene setup, so I'm sure you know how to do this already. So let's get into the material now. So step one is we're going to set up our workspace, and to do that, we're just going to drag all these up like so. Drop this down, switch to 3D viewport, use middle mouse to scroll over, and now we've got an Eevee preview right here. So step one is we're going to hit Shift A. Actually, first we're going to hit New, then we'll hit Shift A, and we're going to add in a Voronoi texture. So then we want to make sure we have the Node Wrangler add-on installed. So hit Edit Preferences, search up Node Wrangler, and make sure you check the box. So once you've done that, you can hit Control-T, and we're ready to get started. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is move the object into the vector, and then we can hit Control-Shift left-click on the Voronoi texture, and we get a nice preview. So on this texture, we're going to be wanting to switch the settings on it. So from Euclidean, we're going to switch to Chebyshev. In the scale, we're going to switch to a 3.075 actually, 3.075. And then we're going to hit Shift A. We're going to search for a color ramp right here, and we'll place the distance into the factor. So then on this color ramp, we're going to want to switch the thing from linear to constant, and then we're going to want to drag the white in all the way to a 0.497-ish, something like this, 0.4 or 0.5. And then on the randomness, we're going to want to make this a 0. So 0.5, we can't see anything. So we're going to want to switch to like a 0.49. And we can see this much. And we can see our tile pattern starting to show up. So the exact value that we're going to be using is a 0.497. And then we get this. Oh, and on your plane, make sure you hit Control A and apply the rotation and the scale. And so for those of you wondering how big these tiles actually are, they are about, for Imperial, they're about 13 inches by 13 inches in the dimensions of these tiles. And make sure you have the exact values in here. So 3.075 on the scale, and the white at a 0.497, and you'll get the square tiles, and they are be exactly the size they should be. And as you scale the plane up or down, so if we scale it down, then apply the rotation in the scale, we get the same sized tiles no matter how big our floor is, as long as we apply the rotation in the scale, and that's exactly what we want. So we can make our floors as big and changes and everything properly. So step two, now we have our tiles, is we have to add the texture and the color on it, and then pretty much that's it. So we're going to have a noise texture. We're going to move the vector into the vector, and then we're going to give this guy a color ramp. So we'll hit Shift A, search for a color ramp, plug the factor into the factor, and then Control Shift left click to preview the color ramp. So the scale on this noise texture is going to be switched to a 7.56 or something about here. You can play with it how you want, but that's what I'm using. And then the detail is going to be switched to a 10, and the roughness will be left alone. So this, we're making a ceramic tile, right? And so for the pattern on this, we want to switch the black to a 0.5. We want there to be sort of like these lines going through it, as you saw in the final result. And to get that, it's not as easy as you might think. Because if we do this, all of it's scaling towards the middle and everything, but we only want to be getting a nice thin line. So to do that, we're going to move the black to a 0.5. We're going to add a second node, and we're going to switch it to pure white. And then we'll make sure this one's pure white as well. Then we're going to put it on the other side like this. So now we start getting those lines going through it with the pattern that we see on other ceramic tiles in real life. And this is exactly what we want. So for the exact positions on these whites, we're going to be switching them to this one to a 0.505 and this one to a 0.495. Like this. Whoops. Got up a little bit. And we get our nice super thin black lines right here. It's hard to see because it's so big, but when we add the colors on it and it's not pure white everywhere else, it'll be very obvious and it'll look proper. So now that we've done that, the next step is going to be to add a second noise texture. So I'm just going to select both of these and then Control-Shift-D. And then I'm going to move the white over here, the black over here, select this white one, and then we'll hit minus to get rid of it. So this is going to be the color of the main tile, is what we're finding right here. So if we Control-Shift left click and preview this color ramp, we're going to want to switch the scale to a 16.9 or a 17, something close to here. You can play with it how you want. This is just distributing the color across different areas and how big you want it, etc. So the detail is going to be a 16. The roughness will remain the same. Now for the colors on this, on the black over here, we're going to want to switch this, and we're going to want to give it a slight saturation of something close to a 0.1. Maybe not quite, but close to. This is about good. The hue, let's do the value first. We're going to want to switch this very bright to like a 0.8. We can go 0.8 exactly even. And then the hue, we'll switch to like something close to a 1, but not quite, once again. So it's sort of like a tannish white, sort of what we're getting here. Now in the second color, we're going to switch this to the value of 0.95. Saturation, this one's going to be more saturated, close to a 2. Not an actual 2, a 0.2, close to a 0.2. Something like this. And the hue, close to a 1, or 0.1. We'll just switch it to exactly 0.1, because why not? And so we're going to leave the colors all the way super far apart. So you can't really see the difference that well unless we drag it up. But it just is supposed to apply some variation into the color of the ceramic tile. And it'll be definitely showing up more when we add the bump and things like that. And so yeah. Anyways, the next step is we're going to be doing the color for the lines that we see here, and not here. Yes, right here. The black lines we see here. So to do that, we're going to be adding another noise texture. Control-Shift-D. And with both of them selected, we'll move it down. And then on the scale for this one, we're going to switch this to a 250. The detail to a 16. And the roughness to a 0.5. So we'll leave those the same. Now for the colors, we're going to have 3 on this one. So 1 directly in the middle. And then the others we'll drag in a little bit here, 1 here, and the other we'll drag in like right here. And then the first color, we're going to select it. And then we're going to be switching the color to sort of this is going to be the darkest version, so sort of a brownish, but more towards the tannish brown side. So the value, we're going to switch all the way down to a 0.05-ish. Oops, to 0.05. We'll do it exactly there, why not? And the saturation is going to be close to a 0.35, something like that. And the hue is going to be close to is going to be a 0.13. So we sort of get our dark brown showing up here. And if we Control-Shift left click, we can preview and we can sort of see what's going on here. But anyways, on the middle one, we're going to want to switch the color to 0.35-ish on the value. Saturation to about 0.6. And the hue to a 0.125. And this is what the color is looking like here. Obviously, it's not going to be all over the ceramic tile. It's just going to be on the lines because they tend to have a little more of a brownish gray feel to them. So on this last one, we're going to be switching the value to about a 0.55. Saturation to about a 0.5. And the hue to about a 0.08. Something about there. Again, you can play with those colors slightly if you want, but that's what I'm going to end up going with in this one. So now we should have to mix these colors appropriately, and then we'll be set. So the step 1 is we're going to search for a mix RGB right here. Then we're going to be plugging in the noise texture right here, the color, and the factor. And then we can select clamp on this guy. We're going to plug this color into color 1, this color into color 2. If we can Control-Shift left click, we can sort of preview what's going on here. We can't see the in-between lines right now because we don't have them on here, but we can sort of see the ceramic tile coming into place, and it's starting to look pretty good. So next, we're going to get another mix RGB, right here. We're going to plug this color from the Voronoi into the factor. And we're going to plug this color right here into color 1. And if we preview it, Control left click, is looking like this. So the only thing we're missing right now, or as far as color goes, is the color of the seams and the stuff that holds them together. So next, what we need to do is we need to hit Shift A, search for a noise texture, plug the vector into the vector, give it a color ramp, like this. Then we can go to preview it, and this is simply going to be the color of the seams. So we're going to move the scale up quite a bit. I'll move it up to 100, the detail to 14, and we'll leave the roughness there. And then as far as the color goes, we're going to go for something for a darker brownish sort of a color with some grays in here as well. Just this is sort of eyeball. If you want to use the exact value, you can pause on the screen, but we're not going for anything too particular. And I'll just drag these in a little bit. And then if we preview this one again, we can move the color into color 2. And we sort of get this showing up in the seams, which is sort of what we want, but I think it's a little bit too dark actually. So we're going to come back here and we'll brighten it up a little bit. Main color, brighten it up a tad, like so. Nice. So now the colors are looking pretty good. I'm actually going to move the scale up to 500, just so that it gets super detailed all in there. The next, all we have to do is add the bump and then the roughness. So to do that, I'm going to move roughness. We're going to go back to this guy over here, this noise texture, the first one we have right here. And we're going to plug this into the roughness. And next, we're going to hit Shift A, search for a bump node right here. Then from this Voronoi color ramp, we're going to take the color into the height. And if we preview this, we can see that it has black on the tile and white on the other part. And so in the bump, it reads the height as white. And so what we need to do is we make sure we hit invert on this bump node like this. And then we can plug normal into the normal. If we preview the principled BSDF, the color isn't on here yet. We can see the bump doing its work, and this is lower than the actual tile, which is what we want. So the next step for the bump is we're going to be duplicating this guy. And then we're going to be switching the values on this one a little bit. So we'll be switching the bump to a 0.01. And we'll be unchecking the invert box. So then we're going to take this noise textures factor and move it into the height over here as well. And then the normal into the normal. What this does is it doesn't do much, but it just adds a little bit of bumpiness on the actual tile, so it's not perfectly smooth, just like you'd notice in real life. And you can sort of see it happening here, a little bit of shadows slightly bouncing around, and that's what we want. So to finish this off, all we have to do is take this mix node, plug the color into the color like this, and then when it loads, we get our nice ceramic tile. And we can see the nice bump in between the tile. And if you think it's a little strong, we can switch the distance like a 0.5, even a 0.1. If you switch it to a 0, it looks perfectly flat. 0.05, and it gets a little bit. So you can leave it at a 1, depending on how the older the house is, usually the more flat it'll be. So the newer the house, I'd go for something like a 0.5 on a newer house. But on an older house, maybe you want to do something like a 0.01 or like a 0.05, something like that on an older house, because things start to sort of just flatten out a little bit. I'm going to be leaving this on a 0.05 for the final product, just because I think it looks really good with a slight bump, and instead of doing like a full 1, I think that's a little bit too much. So 0.05 is enough for me. So let's go back to layout. This is a final preview of what we're looking at here. If we go to camera, not horizontal, we go to camera, we can see, and it's looking quite nice. Something that would be on the floor in like a modern bathroom or something, maybe like a middle class house, something like that. And so yeah, anyways, hope you enjoyed this material, and as always, make sure you check out the other ones and let me know if you have any requests or anything. But yeah, hopefully this provides you with some nice looking textures in your work. So I'll see you in the next one. Adios.